Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Rob Skiff. We're at the another session for Woodblock. Thanks to Dr. Johnson for giving us that really interesting presentation on maintaining a presence in your online classroom. The next session that we're going to be doing is a presentation on a new model for higher education that I'm going to be giving. We're going to talk about all kinds of different issues that will be of interest to institutions. The first session we had this morning was about, with Scott Rank, was on adjuncts and some of the issues they're facing. And the next was on students and the cost of higher education, and also how to develop their own individualized learning plans with Carol Moore, president of Burlington College. Then we had Dr. Johnson, who talked about online pedagogy, and now what we're going to discuss is ways in which traditional institutions of higher education can make a transition to this new environment. But first, what I want to do is talk with you just briefly about some of the challenges in higher education. You should be very familiar with these. They've been written about quite a lot, and of course we're going to have Ryan Craig with his book College Disrupted, who will we're going to be getting into a discussion of a lot of these issues there, but I want to give you guys a little bit of a review session. So in higher ed, of course, over the last 20 years, tuition costs have risen at a rate that's higher even than healthcare. Now we have, in the United States, we've had a lot of changes dealing with, governmental intervention in healthcare, and right now, and a transformation that's happening in that arena, but we still haven't really been able to get control of costs in higher ed, and again, those costs are rising incredibly fast, 6% generally per year. This is making higher education unaffordable for lots of people, and also making the next, putting the next generation into a debt that's going to be very difficult for them to get out of. The second, one of the big challenges in higher education is faculty salaries being too low. Now, if you are a tenured track professor at a research university or at a private college, and if you're at an elite private college or elite school, your job is, you're living pretty well. You're getting paid quite a lot, and your job is very secure. But we've seen an incredible explosion in the use of both adjuncts and graduate students to teach classes at the university, and their salaries are incredibly low, ranging anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 or $4,000 for a section. This low level of salaries is really having an impact on the quality of education that is being delivered to students. And I think one of the things that all college administrators are struggling with is how to, increase the incentives and raise faculty salaries for their adjuncts. It's really critical that they do this again, because most colleges now are relying on adjuncts to teach, over 50% of their courses. The last thing I want to talk about is what I kind of identify as the transition. What's going to burst the higher ed bubble in the US? What's going to create a situation where things change very rapidly? And that is the interest rates on student loans. Right now, the government is actually making money off of servicing those student loans, and is using that to fund many of the programs in the Department of Education's budget. Student loans are now, students have a higher debt. They're carrying more debt than even credit cards, and it's north of $1 trillion. Now, right now, that debt can be serviced because the interest rates are so low. But as myself and Scott Baker argued in Blowing the Last Bubble almost 6 years ago, once those interest rates skyrocket, people are going to start doing very different calculations in terms of the cost of higher ed. And we may see a third of the institutions of higher education in the country potentially close because students aren't going to be able to, students will no longer be able to afford to go and access that higher education in a traditional institution. The other piece that, if you're an administrator, you're a faculty member, that you should be thinking about is challenges in higher ed related to internationalization. Educational institutions worldwide are now relying more and more on getting students to come to their campuses from outside their nation states. In the US, we're seeing a real explosion in the desire to recruit Chinese citizens or students, foreign students, come to the United States. And a couple of the reasons for that is basically also the bottom line. These students are not eligible for Pell Grants or federal student loans. They pay the full rate. And this internationalization is creating challenges culturally at various campuses, and also creating some challenges in terms of how you deal with the finance and the regulation. Internationalization, though, is a challenge, but it's also can create an incredible opportunity because of the second thing, technology. Used to be the campuses were the locations where you had to go to get your education. Now with the internet and with smartphones and broadband, higher education can be accessed anywhere on the planet. And so the challenge that traditional institutions face is that their location no longer matters, and what they're left with is kind of the brand. And where schools used to just draw from a regional location, now they have to compete with everyone on an international basis. And so you really have to have the best programs you possibly can and make those accessible to the largest numbers of people possible. So the final piece is that increasing competition from other institutions that are occurring in the US, other institutions occurring worldwide in your region, but also new services that are being offered like Coursera, edX, Udemy, Oplerno, which really are showing that some of the unique value propositions of universities may no longer be relevant. And finally, regulation. We in higher ed have lots of laws and regulations that were built for another era. And some institutions are taking advantage of that, both to raise prices and exploit students. And in other ways, some of the regulation, that's a question of lack of regulation. And in other parts of regulation, some of the rules are so ancient, and some of the processes of reviewing courses and institutions were really made for an era that was 50, 60 years ago, or the era before the internet. And really, the net and technology changes everything. So the solution for higher ed, it's a solution, but it's also an opportunity. Really, all our educational institutions have no choice but to aggressively cut costs and increase productivity. And really, the only way you can do that is to develop online programs that, again, lower costs and increase the margins. Many colleges are going online and then using the revenues from the online programs to subsidize their campus operations. And we're seeing that all over. If you talk to administrators and you talk to faculty members, they're kind of like, hey, let's just go online, let's do some stuff online, and then we'll increase the numbers of students and the tuition revenue, and then we can use that to support some of our other programs. So they're looking at the online as just sort of a thing that they can plug into their institution. And some of the examples of that are two very successful programs, Arizona State University Online and Southern New Hampshire University. These are schools who, in the last 10 years, maybe they had an okay reputation, but both in these two examples, these are institutions really that are leading the way in relying more and more heavily on the online educational model to help their campus bottom lines. But what's really interesting when you start taking a look is that what's happening is the adoption of strategies that are centered around the old ways of doing things. So the power behind both ASU's expansion, when you think about it, is really Pearson's online learning exchange. Pearson is one of the largest publishers on the planet. It also owns several newspapers and media outlets. And what they do is they offer basic services and course materials to higher education institutions. So think about an online textbooks and all the materials associated with it. You can go to the online learning exchange if you're a college administrator or a faculty or a chairman of a department, and you can call them up and you can find programs that you can expand into. You can use the Pearson's curriculum to now offer a course in or a program in, X subject. It's kind of what people have characterized it as is a plug-and-play curriculum. The curriculum's already set. All you as an administrator have to do is find the professors to teach that curriculum and then start offering it. But the cons are really quite large when you think about it. The intellectual property of these courses is owned by Pearson's. They're providing you with the shell. They're providing you with the shell. They're providing you with the basic technological infrastructure, and you don't own that. You also have to really pay a high premium per student for that course shell. Sometimes it's up to $500 per student. It's a plug-and-play curriculum that everybody also has access to. So the ability for your institution to differentiate itself and really highlight what should be at the center of all education, which is the relationship between the teacher and student, really a little bit falls by the wayside. You're producing a plug-and-play curriculum. If your entire course shell and most of your materials are Pearson's materials, and you start playing, you start using that, what really differentiates your materials that you've bought from Pearson's from those of another institutions? And one of the things that it's really important to look at is if you go onto their website and you look at all the partner institutions, that lots of people are using the same stuff. And there's also that standardization, which means a loss of faculty freedom and control. So when you're using the shell, there are all kinds of rules about what you can modify, what you can't modify. If you start to look at some of the institutions which are using lots of materials from sort of these third-party providers, Pearson's being one of them, these really the electronic textbooks, is that faculty members sometimes can be quite dissatisfied with what they're being told to teach, because again, it is a whole program, it is a whole course, it's outlined, they advertise it as, this has been created by subject matter experts. But let's say you have a sort of a different teaching style or a different view of a particular subject. You're standardizing everything, and when you standardize everything and everybody has access to the same piece, you're commodifying You have the commodification of everything, and you also have the pressure to lower the amount you pay to adjuncts. Okay, so if everyone is using the same intellectual property, the same course shells, whether you're talking about Arizona State University or Southern New Hampshire or other schools, I think you'd all be shocked if you started to call around and find out, well, who's using the Pearson's materials, who's using the Pearson's course cell to really run their online educational institutions. You're then, the only way you can differentiate yourself is with the faculty member. But of course, the faculty member has lost a lot of control because their program has been developed by, you're adopting this electronic textbook. And so the pressure is to really squeeze faculty salaries and get the maximum production out of faculty possible. Now, I believe that higher education institutions need to play to their strengths. And if you take a look at every higher ed institution, whether it's a small liberal arts school or whether it's a large research university, there are areas of expertise that they have and unique things that maybe only a few other institutions in the world offer. So you need to really identify those areas of expertise. And the second point is join a network that showcases your excellence. So you might have the best program in molecular biology. You might have the best one of the really top interesting programs in Javanese or Balinese history. You might have an amazing Sanskrit scholar or a Russian scholar on your faculty. You need to join a network to showcase your talent and use online platforms to get students to come to your campus and start engaging in those programs that you've created that are really superior. Many students do not have the option potentially to pack up and come to your campus. So what you need to do is lower the barriers that to them participating and interacting with your faculty who are experts in particular, in particular disciplines and particular niches. And if you expand your catalog collaboratively, so let's say you've identified a bunch of different skill areas, what you need to do is, place them online and see whether you can connect them to other institutions that have different offerings, or maybe some of them are similar but slightly different. And what you can do is, as your network and your system increases, it becomes more valuable for everybody because they're able to access a diversity of materials that's going to bring students into your particular program. So that's a very different model than what we've got occurring right now, which is if you want to expand online, go to a third-party content provider, buy their stuff and standardize it along with everybody else, and then extract the maximum that you can from the faculty in terms of lowering the pay and keeping the costs low. Okay, so at Oplerno, Oplerno stands for Open Learning Organization. We're really rethinking this dynamic. We're really thinking the relationship that educational institutions can have both with their faculty and also with other institutions. So our plan is sort of a 5-point plan. When we talk to different colleges and different higher educational institutions, whether they're in the United States or outside the US, we kind of follow this 5-point plan. Convert your existing courses that you already have to our online platform. You've created, and I'll get each one of these 5 points is a little bit, we'll have a whole lot more detail in the upcoming slides, so I'll just go through them quickly. Work with your faculty to develop new courses based on their expertise and specialty. Increase your offerings by being part of our network or being part of a network. And we'll also help you to recruit students into your programs. We're working on different ways to do that. We still need a lot more content. And recruitment of students is going to have to change dramatically. You really can't rely just on, Google AdWords and search engine optimization. What you've got to do is build a network and build a following of your faculty and make them your stars so that they're attracting students like a master used to attract an apprentice or apprentices, in the past. And again, lower your cost of tuition by expanding the market and or offerings. There's a huge need outside the US and Europe for high quality education. And there's a lot of people who would love to have access to the kinds of instruction that we take for granted. They're not going to get into an airplane and relocate themselves for 4 years. They can't afford to do that. And also there are barriers in terms of visas and immigration and all kinds of different stuff. What they may be able to do is use a computer or use a smartphone to access your faculty and to become one of your students. This really means reconceptualizing the idea of what a campus is, that your campus isn't just a physical presence anymore. It's an online presence. It's a community of learners that are connected, just like we're connected here now. I'm located in Vermont. Daniel, who's running everything from behind the curtain in terms of the technology, he's in Amsterdam. Scott Ranks in Turkey. Others of our faculty are in Thailand, Latin America, Europe, and faculty. Some students that we've had have been located, all over the U.S. We don't need to go to a central location to become educated. We don't need to go to a central physical location to start interacting and learning from each other. And now the technology is there to make that happen. So you need to lower your cost of tuition by expanding the markets and offerings. So the first step, if an institution of higher education is going to, take advantage instead of, again, just buying content from a third-party provider, you've got to realize that you've already have courses that you've developed that your institution owns. These are programs and courses that you thought that have been really popular, that have attracted a lot of students. And just one second, because I heard somebody might be trying to get a hold of me. Okay. Sorry about that. It's a little tough to run everything, to be doing everything at the same time. So your institution already has a lot of courses that they've developed and a reputation. You might have been just delivering these face-to-face. Well, you need to convert those resources into courses that you've developed and convert the resources that you can use and own and also potentially sell to others, rather than just buying online materials from somebody else. Number one, it's pretty costly, but the second thing is that you then have lost control of what some of your core competencies may be. So for us, the cost to convert materials that you already have into a shell, it's going to run between about $500 and $3,000 per class, depending upon how much needs to be built and how much needs to be converted. We've thought of different ways to lower the cost, but if you're estimating, hey, what would it cost for us to just convert the stuff into an online course shell using Oplerno? Roughly, that's going to be kind of the cost that Oplerno would charge to work with you. My suspicion, though, is that the 3,000 is at the higher end. Of course, it depends. It depends on what you have already documented and whether you've used online resources before. If you've got nothing, then the cost for conversion is going to be a whole lot higher. If you have some experience and your people have some experience with online publishing and that piece, then of course the cost is a whole lot lower. And remember, for the cost of conversion is one seat generally, or a couple seats with that you would pay for that third-party provider like Pearson's. And then once you've converted it, it's yours to keep, and you don't have to keep paying for that slot. The second step is you've got to work with your faculty to develop new courses. Now, the relationship between faculty members and institutions is undergoing a dramatic change. And you really have, for many institutions, you have two constituencies. One is the tenured faculty member, or the faculty members that have been there a long time and been on salary. And then the other constituency is the adjunct faculty. They have various types of skills. And one of the biggest conceptual things that you have to give up is that the idea that if you create new courses, that this IP is going to be yours alone. You need to co-own the courses with faculty who develop them at a minimum. I mean, if you're paying this person a salary, you definitely have the absolute, you own the product of what they produce. But if you're an adjunct, it's going to be really, really difficult. You've really got to create a very different relationship with them. It is absolutely ridiculous to ask a faculty member to convert a class for $1,000, and then that class is yours alone forever. I don't think you tend to get great products or content when you do that. What you want to do is you want to make your faculty member a partner and say, hey, can you convert your class, and you can own it, and we'll get a 10% or 20% royalty when you license that material to somebody else, or when you license that material to somebody else or to another institution. You can no longer expect an adjunct faculty member to teach a course online. Make a course online, teach it, and then take it from them and give it to somebody else. They're not going to be incentivized to create a good, a good system. Okay, so you have to incentivize the cultural creatives to produce, and the cultural creatives here are both your adjuncts and your tenure track faculty. Now, the cost of working with faculty members, the cost that you're going to then pull forward and charge students really depends on your business model. And the business models are so different and so varied that, I don't want to, say, hey, this is how much it's going to cost for you to, develop your faculty this way. There are conversion costs. Teaching online is different than teaching face-to-face. And you really have to evaluate people's skill levels, how much they've taught online, how interactive they are, and again, the cost of doing that conversion completely depends. But for Oplerno, development expertise in terms of working with your faculty members, it really is at almost a set rate. This is working with faculty members individually at about $175 per hour. We also offer some classes with our faculty that are owned by them, 2-week sessions at about at $175 a piece, with Dr. Linda Kaiser and a few others. And so that's also a way to get the process going. But first convert the classes you already have to online, and then the second step, work with your faculty to develop new courses. The third step, which is increase your offerings by being part of our network. Again, third-party providers have a list of courses that they develop. They're publishing textbooks, but, electronic textbooks. That's really, really great. But you need a way to increase your offerings without having to pay those extra costs of creating a class and paying for the seats, and then paying people to teach. So with Oplerno, if you have online course offerings, that you've converted and are working with us, you can list those courses on our marketplace network. You can list those courses for free. They become things that we can offer, you can offer to other individuals. So become part of a network. Next, this is the big thing. Choose courses from the Oplerno network to offer your students. We put a premium on faculty deciding what it is, how they're going to be paid, their rate of pay. And so, you might say, hey, I'd like, there's a really great course on the history of the CIA, or one of Greg Sadler's philosophy classes, or Pat Peters' kitchen management class, or any one of the listings of Claretta Pam has some great courses that she can offer in terms of, in business and, economics. There's all kinds of great stuff on the marketplace program at Oplerno. Now, you can, ask the faculty member, hey, I'd like to, have 2 of my students register for your class. Or you could pay for an entire section and have that faculty member teach that course online with our Canvas. It's kind of your choice. And as an educational institution, remember that, our faculty control the price that they're going to charge, but you can also control the price that you're offering the materials to the students. Now, for Oplerno, we kind of always work under the idea of, cost is 10% or $100 per student, whichever is greater. And that goes, that economic model goes for really kind of like all the services that we're providing. So for example, faculty for us, our content creators own all the IP that they produce. So faculty own their courses. If you're an institution, you own the courses that you've produced. Sometimes whether it's by your faculty or whether it's stuff that you've already got in the bag, and you can license that to others to teach it, or you can teach it yourself. Teach it within your institution at their particular price. You use our network. What we're asking for is 10% or $100 per student, whichever is greater. 4th step, recruit students to your courses and then convert. This is something that we're still working on. Students really want specialized and customized. President Moore talked about the customized and really the high-touch learning that happens at Burlington College with the undergraduate and graduate courses that they're offering in the learning plan. What we have when you become part of the network and you're able to tap into both our network of faculty that have produced courses and soon also the network of institutions that are offering courses, with Oplerno, is that the larger the network, the more valuable the individual pieces, because what, your courses in your programs, you can say, oh, a student needs to take a specialized course in X, but you don't have the ability to offer that. Rather than you losing that student to another institution, you can, through a transfer or something like that, what you could do is you could say, oh, we don't have that class. Here, check out this. And since it's one part of the network and part of the partner institutions that we're developing, then that's really, really a valuable service that you can offer students to help with your own retention, which is also one of the things that this regulatory environment keeps track of. We're also going through this transition that that's happening where degrees, depending upon the discipline, the degrees don't mean as much. So for example, in computer programming or computer science, it's really whether you know how to program. You take classes based on your skill level and needs. You don't necessarily need to have the associates or the bachelor's to be hired as a programmer. You have to be able to demonstrate the skills. My suspicion is that for a lot of different disciplines and work that we do as humans and will do in the future, that clusters of courses are going to be much more important potentially than the degrees. So right now we're still in the degrees dominated part of the market. And you need to remember that individual courses that you're offering students, if you're specialized, if you've got a particular specialty as an institution, and you offer that class and people from outside your institution are taking it, well, they might decide to take more courses with you, or they might even decide to transfer into your degree program, depending. So think of these courses as ways in which to attract new students. Courses are going to be the main unit that we need to measure things, and the main thing that people think of when they're thinking of education, not degrees. Now, this isn't something that's going to occur tomorrow or next week or next year, but in terms of long-term perspective, we need to remember that degrees are becoming less valuable, not more valuable. It's the education behind the degrees and how you document it that's really, really critical. And of course, this is especially the case with non-traditional students who need to come back and take 3 or 4 classes to brush up on their skills, and may not need to go on for that degree. The 5th step here, lower the cost of tuition by expanding your market and offerings. So online education is global and connected. Tech is cheaper than to build tech is cheaper to build than buildings. If you want to attract students, you really need to be thinking about ways in which to bring them to your campus virtually. Because, for example, right now, we know that the desire for higher education is going to double or triple over the next 15 to 20 years. We're not going to be able to afford to build the physical infrastructure that doubles or triples. The classrooms, the buildings, the pools, the auditoriums, all those particular things are very, very expensive. Instead, what we can build is better access online, better programs, better interactive spaces, and building that is going to be, and offering that to students is incredibly cheaper, especially when the delivery method is going to be in the form of smartphones, pads, and computers. Okay. Now, global reach means internationalization. It means that your price point in your market has to be thinking about how can I bring those the other 3 billion people on the planet, how can I access them and bring them into becoming part of my learning community at my institution? And you can't think about, oh, well, we'll have an international dorm for people. That's not going to cut it. You have to be thinking about how you can use technology to leverage high-touch, customized online education. And that's a very different model than what we're used to. We should be increasing access rather than having access remain at the same level that it has been for the last 10, 15 years. So again, increased access leads to more students taking more classes. And when that happens, an increase in numbers means a lower cost per student. One thing, though, we're not talking here about MOOCs or about 100,000 people per class. Really what the whole Oplerno model is, and what, in my opinion, great teaching is about human beings learn best from human beings in small groups under 25. So when you're using technology, leveraging technology in terms of creating those interactions, when you've got a very lean infrastructure, when you're not so connected with physical buildings and physical infrastructure, then you have a lower cost per student, but also, most importantly, a much higher rate of pay for the adjuncts, which incentivizes them to produce great teaching and great learning communities. Well, thank you very much for, the final step, of course, is, if you're at all interested in us helping your educational institution with this transition and becoming part of our network, contact Oplerno. You can email me at skiff@oplerno.com. We'd love to talk. We have all kinds of people and expertise to draw upon, and I'm sure that we can find a good solution for your institution or get you in contact with someone who can help you along in the process of making this transition to an online and much more international learning environment. So thank you very much for your time, and we will see you at 1 o'clock. Please come for this question and answer period discussion that I'm going to be having with Ryan Craig on College Disrupted, the Great Unbundling of Higher Education, his book. We'll be hitting up some of the themes in this talk, but also some others. And then after that, we've got the roundtable, where we'll be discussing trends in higher ed. So thanks a lot for participating, and we'll see you online.